In the beginning, we were born. Then we grew. Everything we knew was new.
Are you gonna spread love or hate? Are you gonna spread love or hate? Are you gonna spread love or hate?
See the world through different eyes. Realize it's all fairy tales and blue skies. Everyone is wearing a mask in disguise, covering up their issues with betrayals and lies. As we wish we could see through our childhood eyes. I ask you. We stand with the belief to be you, to be heard, and to be original.
Is anybody yapping? Life in the backseat, trying to master beyond of detection. Is anyone driving? Is anyone asking? Is anyone grasping the nothingness? Wow! I know we're all fucking exhausted. Wow! Am I in or am I lost it? So I ask myself, am I the only one looking for substance? God!
On his guitar for the most part. He pulls out the power chord and is hitting the strings with it. He's pulling out the power cord and hitting his hand with it and making noises. He's doing DJ scratch noises on the guitar. Like, the dude is all over the place. came out 4 years after.
Reality. Never heard Inspector.
Curious if anyone.
Filled with a ton of emo screamo bands.
I knew we were here to talk some shh. Make sure you check out all of our great weekly shows that we have. You can check out the dads at You Dad Me at Hello, on Sunday. Let's talk some IT, shall we? If you didn't heart and share the show, come on, I am waiting. Yeah. I see there's 4 people in the house. Come on, let's get some heads in here. And just slight warning, this is highly educational.
Ian is Noiser. Ian.
Found it. Enjoy this beautiful pre-record.
In the beginning, we were born. Then we grew. Everything we knew was new.
I'm gonna spread love or hate. I'm gonna spread love or hate. I'm gonna spread love or hate.
We're gonna spread the word because it's talking IT time. Tonight, Angified presents. Okay.
We see the world through different eyes. We listen to all fairy tales and blue skies. Everyone is wearing a mask in disguise, covering up their issues with betrayals and lies, as we wish we could see through our childhood eyes.
Oops.
Are you gonna spread that love?
You're gonna spread that love. You're also gonna go ahead and you're gonna spread the word. We are live. It is 9 p.m. here on Angified. Let's do it.
All right, how's it going, Tony?
And my back, I think my connection actually burped a little bit there during it.
It happens.
I was trying to load up Angie's feed. Oh, there we go. Glenn.
Yo.
Awesome to see you, man.
Good to see you, man. How's it going?
Or to hear you. And we got some cool guests tonight. Noiser 1 and 2, although you guys got to tell me which one's which, because I still don't know who's the symbol and who's not the symbol.
Mike is the symbol, and Ian is Noiser 2.
Well, we're glad to have you with us tonight.
That'll make me Noiser 1 then. I'll take Noiser 1.
And the funny
Noiser
thing
1.
is, in my order, it's reversed.
That's why it's silly noise. That's why.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we were talking about some cool things as far as the music distribution world and the production world, and the decision making you make as you make a song and think about how you're going to put it out there and what you're going to do with it and how you can monetize it. I'd like to continue on that discussion because some of that is, I think, really important for today's artists out there to discuss. It's the kind of stuff that is like people don't discuss in the music industry, how to get through it, because they want to be your agents or your promoters. And in the old days, they didn't give away their secrets, but nowadays we have to know these things in order to be able to promote ourselves, distribute ourselves, and then hopefully maybe eventually make money off of the content that we make.
Ian, take it away.
You said money.
Ian had all the right ideas. I mean,
yeah.
what got me thinking about it is when you asked like how BandLab is going to monetize itself. This is a question I've been asking since I joined it because I love this platform. I love what they're doing, and I'm wondering myself, how are they going to monetize this service, and what is this service?
Yes, that's a key thing, and I'll repeat myself a little so that the new people can hear some of the ideas. But social network, right? When Timberlake character says to Zuckerberg, he says, "Don't monetize it. We don't even know what it is yet," which means that you're going to hold on until you can build the base very broadly, and then you figure out exactly who your audience is and the very best way to monetize, whether that be ads or subscription. I think we're still in that probably phase 3. They can't wait forever. Clouds cost a lot of money to buy, maintain, right?
Storage space. Right now, the big thing eating them is storage space. All these songs and tracks people are putting on takes a lot of hard drive space.
And consider that they have employees and a payroll. I mean, from what I can see, there are some wonderful people that are up there. I mean, somebody's got to put the charts together, right? Break up fights, arguments, suspend people, be the cop.
Ban people.
Yeah. There's all kinds of maintenance and management. I don't know how large the team is, what the payroll will be. But I applaud them for putting together an incredible tool and platform that creative people can get a part of it for free. As I said before, you could have a big studio in Florida, or you could be a guy in India or Mongolia. If you've got the internet, a phone, and a way to express yourself, you can be up there with the biggest people on BandLab. And that's a 30 million.
Whether you're singing or you're making beats. I mean, that's the even cooler thing. The way people are adding tracks, it's not just singers out there with their phones.
Yes.
I run into more musicians doing phone music than anything else at this point.
And so with that super broad base, they say 148 countries, 30 million users, how do you grow it to be the biggest thing it can? Like Zuckerberg, says, don't monetize until we know what it is. You want to make inroads. I see very little traffic from China. It was there for a while.
Well, on the internet, on any platform, you're not going to see a lot of traffic from China. It's a controlled traffic coming out of the country. So any platform,
shut it down.
Any platform is not going to have a lot of traffic from there unless that platform is accepted in China. That's the problem with being in a country where your internet is under government control. Make sure whatever government you're in does not control your internet. Otherwise, you ain't going to see shit.
Well, and I think that's why this is digressing, but Zuckerberg had to make his deal with to get access to that 1.5 billion people. There's 1 million people, I think, 1 billion people in India, for example. Asia has 4.5 billion people. You start to look at giant, width of your platform and network. And like I said before, it doesn't have to be like everybody's heavy hitters for monetizing. You don't even have to be $10 a month for subscription. If you have that broad of a width, you could charge people in a third world country 5 cents or nothing. Ads, maybe. And people could have different deals for different places that they were. But I don't know what their plan is and where they're going. Yeah.
Well, I think as they're in their definition mode, because if they are still in definition mode, their value is as a collaboration platform, a creative collaboration platform. In this case, it's music for the most part. Art, I am starting to see more visuals, artists hiding between those musicians, but they have a music platform where their collaboration tools are what sets them out from any other music platform that they're competing with out there. All the other music platforms out there, their collaboration isn't to this level. And that's why you see the kind of songwriting and music that's being made on here coming from out of nowhere.
Yes. Well, you could be part-time in the business. Go ahead.
Yeah, the revision history list is really brilliant.
Yeah.
You know that just you keep track, you can move back, you can move forward. Really nice done. But Ian, we're gonna have to like shelf that anti-China song for a while. Okay, let's put that thing back. Okay, move it back in the queue.
Just change the lyrics and make it a pro-China song. Come on. Fix it. We'll have two versions.
I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't say anything anti-Chinese. I would just say any government that like filtered my internet, I would bitch about. I don't care what government it is. Let me decide what I want to see. Don't do it for me.
Yeah.
Wherever you live that way with your internet. Otherwise, it's not really the internet. That's not what the internet was supposed to be. It was supposed to be we all connect.
Right.
And then decide like what we want to filter ourselves.
Right. Ideally, but that's what the huge struggle is in the world, I think, with large tech, and who's going to control it? Who's going to be the top dog to monetize?
And it's a challenge for this platform. You know, every platform's biggest challenge is what are they going to allow? What are like BandLab has been really good when it comes to creative allowance. Like if you want to write a song, no matter what you write about, I haven't seen people's content really manipulated because of their song content. The things that they filter are, you know, the obvious platform garbage. They don't want robots and porn bots and all the kind of stuff that makes a platform suck. So they've done a great job of taking care of a lot of that noise, but they don't stop you from putting out a song. And if you want to say something in a song, it's like comedic freedom. You know, you can say shit in a joke that you just can't say when it's not a joke.
Yeah.
The trick is figuring out whether people hear it as a joke.
And you have the explicit button that you push to let people know, like there's at least two. There's a GP and then there's X-rated or whatever R-rated.
Yeah, they give you a mechanism to just like warn people. It's like Ange at the beginning of our disclaimers. Apparently tonight we're going to be highly educational, so you've been warned. You're going to learn some shit.
The opinions expressed by the Noisers do not necessarily represent us. Yeah, right.
For China, for that.
Sorry. But I have a question for you, Tony. How do you think people can do cover songs up here? I can take on Don Henley again. I can put out a cover. How do they handle that? Where Google's all over it, people monetize it. ASCAP in the old days would you'd have to buy a license if you were a club. How do you think BandLab handles covers?
Well, it really depends on whether there's a money mechanism involved. Because if there is no money mechanism and someone is playing something just because, you know, he's playing on a park bench and he's playing the guitar and he's playing a song, they don't go after people who are performing when there's no money involved in the performance. But if there is a way to show like you made money performing this, just like we were saying earlier, when it comes to YouTube's algorithm, and if they detect that the recording they're listening to is an original recording done somewhere else, that's where you get a copyright claim. If you perform a song, it's not an original recording at that point. You are just performing a song somebody else did. It's not the same copyright agenda and copyright strike. You have fair usage laws when it comes to covering a song, and there's very few artists out there. What's his name in Margaritaville? He's a good example. And Metallica, you know, when Metallica decided to make a stance about like ownership of songs, and you can't even play my song unless, you know, you pay me some money. Very few artists are out there stopping people from performing their songs. As long as you're not taking the original recording, slapping it up on BandLab, and then singing on top of it and saying, I made a song.
Well, you remember the old days when people played clubs, and as I understood it, the club owner had to pay ASCAP or BMI for fees, right, for it to handle all the musicians that might come in and cover a Metallica song.
Because the bands and the artists that they were bringing in were under ASCAP or BMI. You can't have these bands in your club because they are ASCAP members or BMI members, and if you do, you need to account for the songs that they played.
Wow. Well, what if you weren't a member? And I never was. And I played the club.
But you were in a club where the club owner wanted all these different types of bands, and some of them were and some of them weren't. And once you have a licensing company like paying attention to a club and, oh, you have performing bands, well, we want to know what's going on musically. It's like having the liquor inspector. You know, the liquor inspector is going and checking what you have and whether you're buying it legit. Well, the music inspector is doing the same thing when it comes to those performing bands in that situation.
Now, how would that apply to BandLab? So I play the Metallica song up here.
With digital, it's really squirrely. This is what we were talking about earlier. It's undefined. Like, who knows? Who knows really what the rules are right now? They don't know what the rules are. They've got the Zuckerberg thinking like, well, we can't sell this yet because we don't know what it is that we're selling. The whole industry is still figuring out how licensing works in that regard. And should you be worrying about it as an artist when you're making music, whether it gets stolen or not? I mean, I think that's any writer's concern right now. Putting it on BandLab, I'm very hesitant to put up my personal material because I plan on finishing it. I plan on it being mine.
Well, Tony, let's get into another topic that's hot up here, the issue of forking. They make you read that whole thing, and how do you explain it? Forking.
It's a commitment to make it forkable. And when you fork something, it's kind of like getting into a marriage, except with less commitment. Hey, I'll jam on that and let's see how it sounds. But you hear beautiful things grow out of these.
The fork is on by default, though. The fork is on. You have to kind of like build a project and go turn the fork off.
They nudge you.
Turn the forker
They
down.
nudge you in a certain direction. Like, hey, make this forkable.
Yeah, well, the collaboration is what they want. It's a strength, but the fork as a default throws you into Neverland. That say you put up a dynamite original song. Now anybody
it's no longer just your song. The moment you make it forkable, it's no longer just your song. You are saying, like, I'm sharing. And that's a good thing. I mean, this is the part that I'm trying to assimilate myself more mentally to. I want to have some songs that I want to jam with the world on. And then I have some that, like, I don't want you to fuck with it until I do.
Well, Mike and I, because we're producing, mostly instrumental music, if there was for me, I can't speak for him, but
do it all the time, man. Come on.
Oh, okay, I will. Is that if we were, our definition or mine would be of success will be Nike comes along and says, hey, Opus 7 is a hot track and says, you know what, we'll pay you some money to run that in the back behind a football pass or something.
And there's your money. There's your money making solution nowadays. People thinking that they're going to get rich with music with like an album contract. Not likely. But if you do write something really cool that like a Hulu production manager or somebody who needs music for something, and they hear that and they say like, oh, that's perfect. You know what? We got a budget here. You want to make a quick 10 grand? We're looking for this kind of song.
But now if
there's plenty of opportunity in those situations these days.
But clearly,
so then Max, Ian, you're saying something about the fork now, right? Like, suppose that song was forkable, how would the compensation take place? I guess is where you're leading.
You'd run into walls if you did have somebody come and say, we want to use this recording for our ending on our Amazon show. You would run into walls if you aren't the persons that you might have been forking it with over on BandLab. might make it difficult for you to actually sign that contract without some
my fear,
talking
Tony,
to a lawyer to see whether you should be
Yeah.
compensating somebody who was forked on it or was part of that fork. You can complicate a situation there if that's what the recording they want to use is. If that
You see,
recording
so the
has
collab
other people
is
in it.
cool.
Yes.
The collab is cool because the collab is sharing and the fork is sharing. But the fork's a little forked up, in my opinion. All right, hold on, I'll leave it at that.
Hey,
he's
keep it
funny.
clean. Just because it's after 11, the kids have gone to bed.
Probably also a question of, whether it was you adding something to somebody else's fork or whether it's your project that somebody else
Yeah.
jumped onto
Yes.
that you made for.
point.
So
Owner.
that would also be a little different.
Because
Very good point. Owner
This-
on the fork. Even BandLab tells you in the little jargon that the person who makes that initial project and has a different level of ownership than
Yes.
everything under it.
Well, in the old days, publishing used to have a different level. There was a performance like royalty that you could get. So that say that I copied a McCartney song and I sold it and it was a hit. Well, he's still the writer of the song, but I get paid for the performance aspect. Now, forking to me would be as if you forked, say, Blunt, right? And you got a great vocalist, and you beat me over to CNN, and they said, Mike and Ian, you're not quite there. I really like Tony and Mariah Carey's version better. We're giving them the contract. Well, that's fine, right? We're sort of in the mix there. It's our music in a way.
By the way, I liked Tony and Mariah Carey's version better too. Keep going.
We'll talk later how we split that
Once
up.
you bring in
Mariah.
Once you bring in Mariah Carey, man, come on.
We could find a better singer right here. Probably Abel. Let's do a shout out for our friend.
Yo.
Actually, that's a good call right there. Yeah, Abel's got that kind of when she goes to her highs, she does have a Mariah kind of approach. I've heard her do like a wide range of different songs.
He was on our last opus, our previous one, and it was great. And we have some things that we could continue to develop. We're also doing a strange cover song right now, which is only just beginning. But the singer is usually your bridge to the greater audience. Maybe not ESPN, but that's traditionally what it is. You have to have a voice to communicate. People who do music like we do, you might go to soundtrack and movies, commercials. There's going to be some other venue for your music. You're supporting other people, probably. Maybe you get a Quincy Jones producer gig out of it or something, if you were ambitious. Right? But let's say go back to forking. So you take your super version up there and you sign that contract. You have performance rights with Blunt, for example. You probably could do some kind of contract and say, if we came along and said, hey, Tony, come on. Hey, what's in this for us? You say, sorry, man, our version's better. We forked it from you. The lawyers down the line might give you a piece of the action, but we added that special sauce that made this a hit.
And that's where the lawyer negotiations end up like being important, because if somebody says like the only reason why, if the place that's buying that recording, we're going to use this, says like it needs to have this, then if they said, oh, we don't care about the vocals, it's the music actually that we just want to hear, then you don't have to worry about talking to the person who put the vocal track on that fork in BandLab, because you're not going to be using that recording in this situation. But as soon as you're using tracks that are part of people that you might have forked with, then you don't want to have that discussion with selling that to them until you've at least talked to the people that you forked with and how they feel about like you selling this. Because that's when people start signing stuff.
Yeah.
When money's involved.
And things are like making beats and making pieces of music are great to let people fork.
Yes.
Putting down drum beats and putting down different, organized components of things. That's very
Sonic
portable.
seeds. Sonic seeds.
There you go. Nice.
For the garden.
That's what it feels like when you put a good little snippet of an idea and say like, hey, what do you guys think about this?
Yeah.
Those little sonic seeds sometimes are where I see the forks that are most amazing. Guys like Emerton and Iceman who
Yeah.
put these little like ambient instruments together, and people just jump on it and imagine a sound.
Very true.
That's one thing.
And, yeah, go ahead. Glenn.
About the forks is that it opens up the possibilities. Like, you know, like you were saying, somebody sees a song, but it could be that somebody is a fan of mine who sees the song. It could be that somebody's a fan of yours who sees the song. You never know, and you're expanding your potential reach by collaborating with more people, in my view.
Yeah, that's the cool thing with the exposure is once you start jamming with certain circles on BandLab, you will hear different variations of your sound, because I found different circles across the last 2 years. And if I decided like I really want to get into hip hop, I know which BandLab circles that I would want to go play in.
Yes. I found, Mike has talked about this, and Glenn, you could do it. Playing the bass guitar, because bass is in almost every style of music, except for true hardcore electronic, right? It's a great way for me. I can usually lay down the tracks very quickly. So like, you know, like what's his name? Chuck Z, you know, he puts out like the hard blues stuff. You know, I do a track overnight usually for him. And, you know, and Beck comes in and sings on it. And I'm amazed at kind of like which direction and where it all goes. Lay the track down and they just go back to, you know, an opus or something.
You start to see those musical Lego blocks kick in.
Exactly.
It definitely excites
when you know you've got that like circle of creative types, and you put that idea out there, you start to see like the sonic building that goes with those people.
Yeah.
Huge amount of creativity. Yeah, just a huge amount of creativity. You never know where it's going to go. And the idea of working with so many different types of people is so different from being in a band. Like we would sort of covet our music, you know, as in a rock band or in a group of 4 or 5 guys, you know, trying to make it. It's just a very different and valuable approach today.
Yeah, I agree. It's exciting.
And that feedback that and it's not instant feedback. It's not the same feeling as like going into the band room with my bandmates, but it's like a slow motion version of it where you get more time to listen and you get more time to give that feedback. I think it really is a better way to write over the long run. I love the jam writing. You know, I miss the days when I would just go in and jam with my bandmates and we'd come up with the groove. But this way makes more sense as I get older in my songwriting for really making that refined piece.
I think the variety from all the different styles also with the forking and the collaborating is also big, where if you were in, you know, with your 4 friends just getting in the room, you guys are going to probably come up with the same style of grooves all the time. Like you might have,
or you're going to jam for 3 hours on the groove that you're used to.
Right.
You know, you don't ever get to the new shit because it's like, oh, this is just a fun jam for 3 hours.
Well, a band was defined by like a sound. Like Hendrix had one type of guitar sound, and you always know it's Hendrix when he's playing. And it's just that's breaking up. That is just breaking up. You know, that whole idea of trying to capture a sound or I think it's breaking up.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we
so
talked about this last time where I see what we're doing, like Mike and I, is kind of merging the analog and the digital world. And to me, that's a different aspect of that same thing. So you cross-pollinate with, I'm in a small group with these electronic guys, and they're younger guys that are, you know, they're pure electronic guys. They might not even play a traditional instrument, right? But they really know their way around a computer and loops and Fruity Loops and all that stuff. And I get a real kick out of collaborating with these guys, like Anorak 318, right? I just put that song out with him. He sees things so differently than I do, and he hears them differently, right? He starts from a whole different place. But I find, this is just an opinion, that a lot of the younger and newer players, they've not been brought up on the melodic content. I could be dead wrong here, but it's more of
Well,
what
they
Mike
might
was saying.
nowadays. They might not even know. They might not even know what melodic is nowadays.
I don't
They they
know,
they
but it seems to
they
be
almost
missing.
like design music by ear. I think more and more nowadays they take less theory and they just more feel. They tap something, they hit something. Today's
Yeah.
kids, that seems to be their approach.
It's like a collage of a way. You grab a loop here, you grab a beat there, and you put it together. And it's a very creative, legitimate way to put a song together.
No,
And we've
it's as
kind of,
much performing as like playing a guitar. Somebody
yes,
hitting a 16 pad
yes,
box is the same as a guitarist. They're both performing.
like live Ableton and things like that, which is
Yeah.
something probably will never experience as a player, right? But
Well,
they're
mentally,
playing.
it's hard to. You're
Yeah.
old school like me. It's hard for me to use these new instrument approaches. 16 pads to me doesn't apply to my piano brain. You know,
Right.
when I want to express, I think in the keys that I'm used to. But today's kids really are more like controller
Yes.
musician. And
And
they think more in like building blocks, like you're saying, where a
yes.
little loop here or a little beat there, and moods. Something me and Glenn were exploring yesterday, where when you're looking for a certain mood,
Yeah.
it's not just about being bright or dark. It's about being angry or happy, and that's kind of where music is going now. You could play the same chords, and I could play them happy or sad.
I agree. And I think we often see it in the comments, like the vibe or whatever they're talking about. You know, what
It
do you
is the
capture?
vibe. It is the vibe.
And I really like that. It's something that I've really learned to appreciate over the last year and jamming with those guys. But then I'll bring my co-writer in, Mike, again. He's more, because he comes from a place with drums. He sees, but yet he sings and writes songs. He's always been in a unique place for me, but he's also he's a math professor and a code professor. So his approach with the computer is far more technical, and he's the one that starts the Opus tracks. He gives me the shell of it.
One thing I wanted to say too is that what I've noticed in the slowness of writing or in COVID or whatever these past 16 months have been is noticing that we're all on sort of different like wavelengths, if you will. Like I'm a drummer, so I'm always counting and I'm always concerned about the fill getting into the next section. And like we're doing a song by Blonde Redhead. Yeah. And for me, I've always done the drums in silence with just the drums and nothing else. So I've got to count 900 bars without any of the music playing, and I've got to sketch it out so I know when it builds and it comes down. Now that style of recording comes from back in the day when everything would bleed and you had to try to get the drums captured separately. So the idea of thinking,
and usually you capture the drums first. Back in the day,
exactly.
I always did my drums first.
Always.
Now it's like Twilight Zone. Everything.
Well, yeah.
Drummers are putting their tracks at the end these days.
You had to copy our mistakes back in the day, but now, you know, like when we speed up or however we're playing, it's like the staccato nature of it sticks out.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. You can, if your quantization's true and your all your DAWs are happy and everyone's doing 120, not 120.2, right?
If you're playing with machines,
yeah,
I cannot play at a consistent 120. I'm sorry. I will never play for 3 minutes at a consistent 120.
But in a shareable, partially digital, broken up data world, having a consistency helps the things go to the next level and move along. And like you said, you can add it at any particular time. And so it's just different. Like Ian thinks differently. He's thinking about bass and melody and harmony. And I'm like, fuck that. Pardon my French. I'm like,
that damn bassist, they do think differently.
Nobody hears it anyway. I mean, it's the drumming that we're all a little self-centered that way. But I've learned that we're thinking on different wavelengths. It's really kind of what I wanted to say. Yeah.
And that's just the two of us, and we kind of come from a similar place over the years. Now you enter in with all the people from BandLab who are recording on a phone or doing some, you encounter so many different people that record in so many different ways. And Mike just hit on one of my big pet peeves when I go out and deal with other people. I call it on the grid because that's like the metronomic sense. And when you're collaborating on BandLab, even if we're like old school, like Glenn, you can do like Grateful Dead and stuff, right? It's supposed to float like a boat, right?
That shit is not on a grid.
Bill Bruford is not in the background
the grid.
counting, right? I mean, it's supposed to be like that. That's the vibe.
Yeah.
But the trick is to get it in the recording studio, and we got to agree on a basic 120 BPM so that I can put it up on BandLab. It's on the grid, and then you, Tony, the next guy for keyboards, can load it down on your DAW, and it's 120 is 120, right? I mean, it can't be 120 and a half. And
that's why in those scenarios, like nowadays, every good DAW does actually have a metronome track, and Cakewalk, it's very easy to actually do. Like, you can take any wave file and drop it up to the top of the timeline, and it will create a metronome track, and it will actually analyze the audio and say, like, this is the beats per minute. And even if it floats throughout the whole song, the metronome track will create itself based on the beats in the audio file. It's a cool way. Yeah, it's a cool way of recording freestyle, because when I record on my piano, I can't use the metronome. I float. So eventually the metronome gets in my way. I'll record the whole track, and then I'll make an audio file and let Cakewalk analyze it and create my actual metronome track for me. And it'll float. It'll float the way that I do.
You're not on the grid. You're not on the grid, and you have tempo. So you can see the slight slowing and changing and all that beautiful music that happens.
Well, the key for you to load it up in your DAW and still get the same metronome is if your DAW has a metronome track and if it carries over between the DAWs, all the DAWs have to support the same feature.
Well,
otherwise you have to set that BPM.
When
you import those waves.
Right, it'll change. Yeah.
Well, you can set it to whatever. If you start a new project and say, I set it to 80 BPMs, and you go import waves that are at 120, they're going to come in, but now you've got this like mishmash timing, because how that DAW sees those tracks and the time is not actually the way that the time originally was. You've broken your pieces. Your 4/4 bars are no longer proportionate in that 80 BPM project. That's why you don't want to have desynchronized projects when it comes to your beats per minute.
And for a lot of the stuff that I jump in on bass, like you mentioned, it's usually stuff that is floating around, because it's a lot of times it's just somebody with an acoustic guitar just putting down something, and their timing might float.
Who knows what the BPM is?
Exactly. So I just basically put it on repeat and just treat it as if I'm sitting in at a live show, and then kind of tweak my part after the fact to try to get as close as I can.
And nothing is greater than the variance of the beginning of Honky Tonk Woman and the end of that song. They must speed up about 12 clicks through that song, and every time they hit the chorus, it's faster, and then they stay in the verse, and then they hit the chorus and it's faster. They hit the solo, it's faster. They hit the outro, it's faster. And I'm telling you, we're going to lose some of that. We're going to lose some of that live, speeding up of feel that you get.
Well, you already have
a bunch of people are playing on a stage.
Look at the music over the last 20 years. It's become more mechanical. It has become more synchronized and syncopated, because that's what came with digital music production. A lot of it became more beat refined. But the creative musician is always going to find a way to hit an offbeat. Even if the quantization tries to fix that offbeat, sometimes you got to go in and force it.
I blame disco for the downfall of energy and music. And
Melodyne.
But you can dance. But we danced the night away.
Well, you guys have probably all seen Beato, right? I mean, he's a
Oh, yeah.
favorite. And,
Love
you know,
him.
the death of music and all the stuff. And he goes back
Yeah,
to the
that-
quantization,
I
right?
just watched that one not too long ago.
Yeah. And then controlling the pitch. Mike and I have great fun with our other buddy, Steve. They bashing me in fun with Melodyne, right? Or other pitch correction tools now, because, you know, they've been using that for years and years. It's no secret, Madonna and others, sorry, Madonna, they can't sing.
At this point, I think she's come to accept it.
Yeah, but Melodyne can fix that. Basically, you can get in with surgical tools, and producers have been using this stuff for many years. Now, Beato took that on in a recent thing, and he said, look, I'm a producer. I pull this thing out of my tool bag when I need to use it. But you
Hopefully,
have to,
you don't need to use it a lot.
right. there's
No
nothing will
music
be the-
producer wants to fix a project with Melodyne.
I
They do
agree.
it because they have to.
But
Right,
he made
yeah,
the good point that, you know, in the right hands with the producer who stakes into the vibe of the singer, like Mick Jagger or whatever, you don't want to pitch correct everything he does. You need to Jagger to come off.
You
as
don't want to
Jagger.
tell that singer to do another track in that case.
Well, that guy's he's not going to be Freddie Mercury. We could be there all year, but he's got a vibe and a thing he's communicating, which is really great, really, right? But you've got to judiciously use those tools. And the digital world has given us now so many tools, but he brings out the highlight that it's been misused. All the way to Cher was the first abuser, right?
Well,
and then the T-Pain.
And see, that's not so much Melodyne there, because that's not pitch. What Cher did, she brought in the vocator and the use of synthesis to like make the vocal go into the key that you want it to. That kind of pitch shifting, what Cher did, is the problem that Rick is actually talking about over the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's
Melodyne,
harsh.
the way that they use Melodyne in most cases, I think the big producers, is just to fix those little tails or those little pitch problems here and there. Melodyne's great for a quick pitch adjustment on a single note, but you don't want to be using it.
Right.
Otherwise, it's no better than a vocator. It still sounds like a human
Right.
synthesizer, and unless that's the sound you're going for,
Right.
some
Which
people
you might be.
some people try to make that their sound. And if I guess if that's your sound, you're not really a singer. You're just a person who can sing into a machine at that point.
That's
But
kind
a
of what
good
we're talking
singer,
about.
a good singer who doubles a track immediately gets a slight chorusing effect in between the slight differences, but they're pretty spot on if they're a good singer when they do track doubling.
And if you're doubling a track and you're using an effect like that to like just shift it, it's not much different than how you would do guitars in the like 70s and 80s. You could take a guitar track, double it, run this one through a little bit of a shifter just so it's off just a bit, push it to the other side, and all of a sudden a solo got fatter. Or
Right.
the chords got wider.
Right, it's the fatness. Yeah.
With vocals, you do that too, but you don't want to go melodyning the whole track.
Right.
Because as soon as you do that, like the other vocal track, there's a distinct difference between robot singer and human singer.
Ian, listen to Tony. Listen to Tony.
That's
You
also
gotta
where he's talking about.
You got to use it judiciously. It's
Yeah.
not meant to be used across the track.
Otherwise, you're just basically taking that vocal track and you're polishing a turd.
Yeah.
Oh, I
It's a
like
really-
that.
Yeah, but that could be good fertilizer, in your organic garden.
They have
In the
shown
right
that you
pop
can-
songs, in the right pop songs, it is the song.
Yeah.
You can polish Shinola, or the shit from Shinola. They did polish it actually on one of those shows.
Yeah.
But no, you don't want to polish a turd. Here.
But I brought up that thing because it's just another one of the digital tools. And we started with like tempo and then using the DAWs,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
what
it's Kool-Aid.
Mike made this point is that in some way it's all nudging us towards being more on the grid. Glenn, even when you're going to probably lay down some of those classic rock songs you do, I mean, aren't you looking at, you do your arranger, my chorus is going to come in here. I'd like it to be measure 27. If I'm going to punch in tracks or put it up on BandLab so other people can, if they can edit correctly and come in, You know what I'm saying? You need a
Yep.
discipline in the
There's going to be
background
a
now.
grid revolution. You're going to cause a grid revolution, man. We're all
Now,
going
it
to
can
go
go
off the grid.
it can
We're
go
all
too
going off
far
the
with
grid.
that also. Like people can get too caught up in quantizing and making it sound robotic and that's where you've even got the humanize or randomize button where you can say, quantize it and then, okay, now kind of de-robot it a little bit.
Yeah,
Just
right,
put a
right.
little randomness in there so it
It
sounds more.
has gotten better. It has gotten a lot better.
Or
the
even
quants.
somebody who just uses too many effects.
Yeah.
The big problem with digital, it's so easy to add effects these days that like people have a habit sometimes of trying to cover up a mistake here or an emphasis that they didn't do themselves. So let's try to boost it up. They try to use effects to compensate for a track that they're not actually happy with themselves.
Yeah,
And
let's face it, they're practicing.
use
They're
effects,
practicing in the effect here.
yeah, if
They're
you use the
practicing,
effects as lipstick, if the effects become lipstick, then you should ask yourself, like, why, if I'm applying this to try to fix something that I don't like in my sound, is it something that I should fix a different way? I don't like using effects to fix things.
Better to just re-record that little piece.
Effects
Yeah.
massage things into place, and they help to get the kind of sound that you want out of something. But effects don't fix things, and if you get too caught up in using them that way, this is the digital mixing battle that it's taken me years to like realize, because in the old days I used to try to use the effects to cover up crappy recordings and other things, and as I came to learn, like, that's not going to actually fix what I'm trying to fix. It just might distract you from hearing what I hope you don't hear.
So
To your
true.
point before about the how to come up with the tracks or how to put the timing together, like I don't usually sketch it all out from like a composer would at the beginning. Like for the most part, take a song.
You're
Like
getting there with that arranger setup.
I'm starting to, yeah, a little bit, and using the
you're
Lego blocks
thinking
at that
like
point.
a composer.
But if I was doing a song like for the Grateful Dead, I did a song "They Love Each Other," right? And I just took a live version from '73 or whatever, and I threw it in there, and I basically just played along on the bass. So I just put it on repeat, played along on the bass. So again, it's not on the grid, but it's on the grid according to that track. So if I had used a metronome track that I could drag the track into, I would have dragged it up there, and it would have built the metronome track for me. But instead, I just recorded the bass the whole way through, and then I recorded a guitar part and a keyboard part and the drums, and I went part by part, and then at the end I just take out the Grateful Dead, and now it's just 7 layers of me in there. So I'm on 2 guitars, 2 keyboards, bass.
Basically use that as your metronome track. That starting track was your metronome track, and you re-layered all the layers yourself.
Exactly.
In the old days, that's how I would have been doing it too. Before MIDI and all this, I would have started that way.
Yep.
And Glenn, you just hit on what is a new thing for me. We're doing a cover song, and Mike just mentioned it, a Blonde Redhead song. And I don't even know who they are, right? It's a strange art band. And this song is 20 years old, and we're going to have Abel's going to be singing on it, right? And it's going to be, I think it's going to be pretty cool. But here's a technical thing, and because I don't think I've done any other covers that I've started. So I had to think about how was I going to lay it out so people could communicate easily and lock it in so we were on a grid that we could all share. That makes sense. Now, the first problem I ran into, Glenn, was like you dragged in the Grateful Dead, right? Live.
Yep.
Well, me being the control freak that I am, I realized right away that Blonde Redhead's version was at like 120 BPM, but 120.73, because back 20 years ago, right, the producer,
now they have fractions.
And fractions do not work on BandLab.
They certainly complicate things if you're going to use the online editor. Yes.
And that was 0.83, by the way. Keep going.
Correct. Thank you, Professor. And so here's what I did, Glenn. And as Mike knows, I am not the most sophisticated tech person. I have actually a short fuse. Luckily, I have not smashed the laptop yet. So I realized it's not clicking for the BPM. It's not working as I dragged it in. So I think I know what the problem is. So I've got to either push it up to 121 or get it back down to 120, which is what most people agree the song should be at. So I learned something last week of what Tony hit on, that I had to move from GarageBand over to Logic, and you can set Logic
Oh yeah.
to keep tempo. So I set it at 120. The band is at 120 plus something, and I drag it in, and it beautifully stretched it to get that micro change out. Go ahead, Tony. What do you think?
Well, see, that goes to what I was saying earlier about the crack approach with features. Apple has made GarageBand almost useful, but
Right.
if you want micro BPMs, you have to go buy Apple Logic, because that's why they bought Logic, was so that they had a reason for you to go from GarageBand. And BPMs at that level,
Yeah.
you need the professional program, because GarageBand will give you like 120 or 121, but not 120.09.
But in this case,
And
I
I believe BandLab is a similar DAW where you'll get 120 or 121.
The online editor.
Yeah.
If you try to put precision in the online editor, it doesn't know what to do.
And that's why, because in the end of this, I've got to give this up, put it up there so that Abel, right, over in Japan, right, it's a miracle. She can just access this, and she does a lot of work with her phone. I need 120 to be 120, right? And she may actually, as a singer, as you go up the pyramid of sound, as I call it, they float more at the top, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Where Mike is the bedrock, 120 is 120.
Let me tell you, right? I did 900 bars in silence, and it all matched up.
I know, if you could do it, everybody else should be able to.
And I texted him and said, "Did you quantize this?" Because I was about to lay my bass on it.
I set my Roland to 120. My Roland V drums, yeah.
Yeah, he laid it down. The kick drum is so freaking tight. I thought the machine had done it, and he was pulling my leg again. But no, he can actually play.
He has no idea if I play anymore. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's the sign of one who has practiced. And consistency in performance, like, you got to exercise in order to stay consistent. I'm not consistent because I stopped playing for like 10 years. I'm trying to figure out my BPM again.
I found a little bit of a workaround for the problem you're talking about on BandLab, actually, which with the audio stretch, but it's basically trying to move in 5% increments. So you can go from 100% to 95.
Oh yeah, but be careful with that, Glenn.
Oh yeah, definitely be careful.
That workaround, but it would not be my choice.
But the other thing is,
I don't like audio stretching.
Now it jumps by 5%
Twilight
each time.
Zone shit when you stretch audio.
It tries to go 5% each time, but if you hit where it says 1.00 and you just drag up or down, you can go by as little as 1%.
Yeah,
so you can get those little bits if you need them.
But
like you said, it has to
if
fit
you don't
right,
hit the sweet spot, when it comes to audio stretching, if you don't hit the sweet spot, you might not know you really misaligned a track until you're back to like mixing and you're listening to all the tracks, and then all of a sudden you start to hear like, damn, okay, that is out of shift. I hate messing with waves when it comes to BPM shifting, and you know this, Glenn, because we've had discussions about like.
I'm thinking more as the first track in the project.
Manipulating MIDI.
Oh yeah.
Like just fixing that first track in the project. If it's a little bit too fast or too slow, like fixing it there before the other parts are in. But like you said, if you have other parts in there, you're definitely going to screw it up.
That's the key word. The key word is before everybody else puts something in. If I'm going to adjust the click track, and to me, the first track is the click track. I don't care if it's a guitar. I don't care if it's a drum. That first track sets the tempo for every other track that gets added. If somebody comes along afterwards and changes that master tempo or does something, that project is no longer an us project. That project is now a you project because you fucked up the whole synchronization of all the other tracks. And you can fix that. There are people who sometimes accept that and deal with it, and like they try to make things work. But when the tracks lose that synchronicity,
when I collab, it's what I call a hybrid at that point. I like to do everything in my DAW. But if somebody shifts it, and I worked with that recently, a really talented guy who pushed the BPM up It was on a jazz thing that I put
Did he
out
feel
there.
like the song should be played faster? Did he
Yes,
push it up? Did he push it up on the mix, not the
he
tracks themselves, but did he make a mix and say, "Here's what I think it would sound better as"? Because I'll push it up on the mix down, but I'm not going
no.
to push up every track. If I have 50 tracks and people are doing shit, I don't want to re-tempo that.
Luckily, it
I'd
was
rather do it to the mix at after.
agreed. But being Band Lab, and we were trying to. He's got limited time. Really talented guy. His name is Job, right? And he took the song and he heard it. He's very musical. And he said, let's pick the speed up. And I've got ideas. I want to change this thing. Well, I had to make a choice. I liked it right away, what he did. But instead of going back and saying, well, wait a minute, I got to change my DAW now up 6 clicks. The hybrid began where now, if I was adding like another horn part, I was doing it in the BandLab DAW. You see what I mean? Because
at this point, this was
Yeah.
giving you the new tempo to work with.
At the new
That's
tempo,
right.
yeah.
And so
basically,
now it became a
you
hybrid.
evolved from like, if I'm going to lay a track, at that point, you wouldn't be laying your track on one of the earlier revisions. You'd be
That's right.
laying, and this is where that revision management that
Yes.
we were talking earlier about the
Yeah.
value. To be able to go back to a track before you started changing things like BPM and all that,
Yeah.
it's useful having that map. Like
Yes.
I can't stress how invaluable that has become for me in just the last 6 months with projects where it's like, can I get that track? And somebody'd be like, I don't know. Thankfully, in the map, I was able to get stuff that in old school days would have become non-existent when you're bouncing tracks on tape.
Yes.
Easily lost. Easily got, yeah. Or
Oh
reread.
yeah, it gets lost once you ran out of
Yeah.
12 tracks on your audio tape, and oh my god, we got to bounce all that down to a new
Exactly.
level.
Even in Pro Tools, when you record every note you take in every session, you're still lost in which one was good, which one you wanted to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings me full circle back to the miracle of BandLab and the size of their cloud. Because
Yeah,
think about it.
it's got to
If
be
every
monstrous.
project has, on some of mine, I'm using all 16 tracks with Mike's songs, right? And you make 10 revisions, and each one of them, right? Add all of those revisions up in terms of
here's
memory
the key
size.
though. The reason why it's not as monstrous as you think, revision history,
Yeah.
the way that revision history works is it doesn't save multiple copies of things it doesn't need to.
Save the deltas.
In a revision, yes, the deltas. The things that they need to, when somebody adds a new track or they fuck with the track, if you want to make sure there's another copy of a track, duplicate it and change it. And then yes, there are now 2 WAV files and they're storing them, but they don't duplicate the tracks when somebody
Got it. No, I got
forwards
it. They create
And-
pointers to previous tracks
Yeah.
that are duplicated.
Oh, that's so
and
clever.
it's
they
that
save them.
mapping.
Smart.
It's that mapping that saves them from like, instead of being like,
Yeah, because you could definitely end up with 100, easily. I mean, I know
Yeah.
Angie has some
Oh,
projects with 50
5
people on it.
times, 5 times bigger. Yeah, 5
Right.
times bigger. Minimum.
Oh, well, that's an incredible point. Learn something
It
there.
is, and our DAWs do not do that. Our
No
home
way.
baked DAW, all our DAWs that we work with locally.
Your DAWs I
Yeah, I
believe
can't say
Cakewalk
that
does
for all
have
DAWs.
revision.
What am I thinking?
I think
I
Cakewalk
apologize.
does have actual revision history in it. I've never utilized it at that level. For me, if I'm working on a project and I do something so big that I want to keep a different version, like I know if I do want to jump back to this, I will literally save as and put it in a different folder. And
Right.
now I know that like this is my later version because I wasn't sure about what I was about to do. And usually it's like BPM settings. If I'm making those kinds of changes, I'm not going to destroy my ability to go back to the one that did work just to test what it's going to sound like if I take all these tracks and throw them 20 beats faster.
Yeah, that's a great computer scientist move. Absolutely. You're like
in
a
the old
milestone.
days, that was your only revision history option
really?
was save
Really?
as. Now we are living in a place where it's like, oh my God, if you were to just completely use BandLab for all your music production, it's being mapped out for you. Every little sneeze that you make.
It's amazing.
I love that revision history is definitely bonus
Yeah.
for those reasons. You're going to make a change, you're not sure, but I'll save it now and then make the change and then save it again. And guess what? You've got 2 revisions that you can go back to. So you can go to the before and the after, and you're all good.
It's their biggest value added service. What we were talking about earlier when it comes to how do you monetize and what is worth what, that is their biggest value added service to this music collaboration.
Yeah.
That's a great point. You know, I've gone back, and probably you've done this too, where you say, you know, I need that first bass part that I did or something. I'll sometimes go 3 revisions back and download it back into GarageBand because they were my only history of the 3 bass tracks that I put up there. GarageBand just steps on one to get another, unless I do an entire file save as.
And
right?
you're downloading an uncompressed WAV file or a 24-bit file, so it's a good file, right? I mean,
if you keep it really uncompressed, I mean, the transfer back and forth, as long as you are dealing with waves and you're keeping it uncompressed, what you're moving and what you're getting can keep moving and getting. If you start getting into any kind of compression, it becomes a mess. It's like the old days where you put it on a tape, recorded it to another tape, and he made a dub for somebody, and that 5 dubs later tape sounds like total crap.
Let me ask you a technical question.
Just like my DNA. I keep going.
Same here.
It is the files. I mean, it's 2 parts here. Now, with the files, a WAV file is just a WAV file. I take it from GarageBand.
A wave is a container. A wave file type is what they call a container. The wave itself, just the container holds the sound data with no manipulation. It's just an open box. Put your sound inside of it.
So it's not where does the compression come in? Like sometimes I'll talk to Mike about
the
does it get
user's
changed?
choice.
What?
With waves are uncompressed file containers, so you don't add compression to a file container that doesn't do compression. When you use MP3 or was it AA3, all these different compressible file types, they use a certain kind of audio compression file, and sometimes it's lossless or close to lossless, and sometimes it is a tape dupe as far as what we're used to. And then do that tape dupe a couple of times between machines and recompress it again. MP3 could eat it up and then eat it up some more and then eat it up some more if multiple people keep recompressing that audio.
So a WAV file retains its integrity. If I put it on BandLab, then Abel downloads it, she puts it back there. The file is always the file, right? Yes.
If what she gets while she's singing, if what she gets, her track gets added up there, if she's recording in the cloud, it's actually being stored there. She doesn't have to upload a wave at that point. The only time that you have to deal with a wave is if you're working on your DAW and you lay down your track in your DAW, and now you need to put that track up on BandLab. You're going to upload that track to a BandLab track, and you either chose to save that file as a uncompressed format like WAV, or you chose to make it an MP3 file. Right. And if you chose to make it an MP3 file, the file compression of that format is already done its dirty work. You can upload that to BandLab. BandLab will hear
they'll take it.
Compressed version of that MP3. That's not the ideal
right. And I never
that's not the ideal file that you would want to send. You would want to send the uncompressed wave. As long as it's less than 125 megs. If it's 125 megs or smaller, send it as a wave, uncompressed, 16-bit or 24-bit.
And I agree. I always use the
24-bit does make it bigger. So the whole reason why I stay with 16-bit is because they have 125 meg limitation.
Well,
right. And you also have the 44.1 or the 48 hertz.
Yeah, and 48's preferred also. But again, 44, we're so used to from CD technology, like 44.1 16-bit is still like dominant in
Well,
the audio
when
world.
Nyquist invented the 4041, he basically doubled our upper hearing range of 20,000 or 21,000, and figured that would take care of all the
Should be everything we ever want to hear.
it's like acoustic everything that we can't hear that needs to be there, like whatever they call it, psychoacoustic phenomenon. He captured it. He felt.
Well, apparently you never heard Glenn's bass. You gotta stretch that.
I love the 5-string. Get down low.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's why they add extra strings and do extra things to instruments these days to stretch that sound a little further.
Yeah,
That's what we're doing when it comes to like the 44, 48, and 16-bit, 24-bit. These are small jumps. The truth is you don't hear a big difference when you compare these little jumps. It's like going from 16-bit to 24-bit video games, or well, actually 8-bit to 16-bit. I don't know if you guys were gamers, but there was a big difference between Atari and Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
You did notice it then, because it doubled, and it when it
Well,
doubles,
remember
you notice the effect.
Remember the Tascam 4 track where you could get up to 15?
Oh, the Porter Studios?
The second, or the 7.5?
Yeah, the Porter Studios were awesome.
Yeah, for the large reels. That made a difference. Doubling the speed of the tape is like the bit depth.
Are you talking the Tascam reel reels?
Yeah, Tascam reel to reels. Yeah, man.
I did have a couple of Porter Studios because I had that kind of budget. I did get a Fostex R8 that was the reel to reels. $40 a fucking reel for like an hour's worth of audio tape. Yeah, it was 8 tracks, but $40 for 8 tracks for 60 minutes.
You have to get your degauser for that.
That was like 1994.
Yeah,
and that's where every take was precious because you didn't want to waste the tape, right?
Oh yeah, and you didn't want to like make a change where you couldn't go back and you had to bounce all those tracks. The moment you started bouncing tracks,
that's a loss.
You were making a revision commitment at that point. Imagine on BandLab if every like 8 revisions somebody had to say like, this revision's now as far as you can go back. And that's what it felt like with tape, because as soon as you bounced 8 tracks down to another tape, unless you kept the original 8 tracks and then you were willing to go back to it, but that's another $40.
Well, this brings us back where Mike and I often talk about Steely Dan, of course, right? The ultimate anal studio recorders back in the day.
And the ones who were starting to record, they were building their own recording studios. These are the guys that started like fucking recording.
Yeah. And did you ever hear the stories like that they would run the tape through once just to get the magnets to start activating before they would do their takes? You know, and then you're just using a whole pile of
analog equipment needs to warm up. That shit needs to spin, just like printing press. You have to like run a bunch of ink and garbage just to get it going.
Yeah, but you could saturate the analog on the snare drum especially and not have it break up, but you get saturation in the red, and it gave it a punch. It was really kind of a nice sound.
And see, that's how those old engineers would come up with cool ways of like, those are like little sonic hacks when you know you're going to get a certain sound because the analog equipment performs that way or records that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're using the equipment as a tool.
I think the cars had they even had like a microphone built into the snare drum at one point in their experimenting. But all kinds of tricks.
Queen's producer, that first album.
Oh, I loved that part in the movie where they showed them when they were making that first album. They got the giant house, and we're basically like, you know, let's put the audio equipment in this room and let's fucking bang on a bunch of things and see what it sounds like. When you're making your first couple of albums as a band, and to be able to just get a giant house somewheres and say, we're going to sit here for the next 3 months and get rip roaring drunk and make an album.
Experiment.
That's the dream.
It's true. You know, we never had a control booth. We had a basement, so we'd always have to take the lead guitar solo and put him in the next room, and so he wouldn't bleed too much on the tracks to the other stuff because it was so loud. The lead guitars, forget it.
And the basement and the garage are where most music is made.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah,
I really believe.
well, now let me bring another part of my question back to BandLab. How does the auto mastering and mastering work on top of these wave files that we just talked about?
Well, how do you like it? How do you guys like it?
Good question. That is such a good question, because I would love for them to explain to me what they're doing. I know it's compression and it's a little bit of equalization, but how it works, me personally, I will never use it again. The moment that I learned how to mix, I hated what it would do to my mixes. So once you like your mix and you hear what you want to hear, do not send your file to BandLab and then tell them to manipulate that, because that's just as bad as compression. In some cases, it's worse. It can emphasize something you don't want emphasized, or it can remove sound that you really want to be there. I've lost instruments because in the old days, I used to always use their automatic one. They give you like 4 choices: bass, centric, and the CD quality, but really those are just like recompressing. You shouldn't use those. The advanced one, though, in the old days when I didn't know what I was doing with my mix, it felt like it was punching it up. It was like, oh, it sounds a little louder. But then I started to realize I wasn't hearing like acoustic guitars or flutes, sometimes brass. Instruments were disappearing, and I had these big compositions with like a bunch of instruments. I started to notice it, and it was that advanced compression that mastering. You're better mastering yourself. Find the sound that you like, and what you're going to notice is it's going to sound slightly different than how on the same sound card with the same volume. What I hear in Cakewalk after I upload it to BandLab and play it back through their editor doesn't sound exactly like the version. How to compensate on my master, and because I know that the little bit of boost that I end up giving it, I purposely push my final masters for BandLab. You have to learn to compensate on your master wave file that you're going to upload to BandLab, and once you know the difference, you'll change from, you'll either boost a signal a little louder because you know it needs push, or you'll EQ it in such a way that
Steve talked about doing that. And also, by the way, this is one of their revenue streams, mastering, right?
It could become one.
I thought they already had one where you could send your song to Dave or John or Bill or whatever, and they would master it for money, I thought.
You are right that it is one of their potential revenue streams, but me as an audio engineer,
right, you wouldn't need it where a lot of novice people might need that, right? But I know what you're saying.
Here's the way.
I suggest to any artist out there, any artist who's serious about their sound and says they want to have control of their sound, are not going to want a service to master their sound. They might want to have a audio engineer or a studio, but they're not going to want to have a platform be how their sound gets made. And this part of the mastering does affect all the sound. When they add their mastering, it's not to one part of the tracks, it's to the whole mix of the tracks, and they're mixing there. is something you can appreciate when you're just getting on BandLab, you're just getting into music. But as soon as you start to want to have any creative control, the last thing you want to do is lose that control by putting up a master that now is under another mixing algorithm, and it's not a good algorithm for the 4 choices that you get. All 4 of those choices
Yeah.
don't complement themselves. The bass sucks. It totally
Yeah.
blows out the fucking speakers. And the advanced does bring the volume up, which if you're on a phone, it's like, oh, it's a little louder. It sounds a little better. But if you're listening to it through like regular equipment or my speakers when I do the test, the advanced one sounds horrible. So that's why I had to stop using it.
Maybe what pushed me away from the automatic mastering was the fact that, I mean, I had never used it, but I had seen a bunch of waveforms that were put up that looked like a brick. You know, there's no ups, there's no downs. It just looks like a solid brick. So I saw that and I said, I am out. I'm not in with that. Same thing with the denoising that they do automatically.
The fingerprint.
The denoising that they do automatically also can cause artifacting and other things going. So I started to do that in a different way myself.
Yeah. You know how I've compensated for this process? Because I don't know, like I said, I'm not like the high techie, right? But I have a lot of tracks.
If you can turn a volume knob.
Well, here's what I do, Tony. Here's what I do is every time I put a revision up there, because I'm doing all the work in GarageBand or sometimes Logic, and then I push it up there and so that Mike can hear it and give me feedback on the mixes or something. Well, every revision I take, I put the auto on there, right? So it tells me, oh, those hi-hats are popping when I use the CD quality. So then the next revision, I tweak back to it. So you know what I'm saying? I alter my mix in anticipation of what they're going to do.
Right.
See, now, rather than use their like AI there, me and Glenn were talking about mastering effects and VSTs, and Blue Cat is one of the ones that he's been checking out and I've been playing with. They have these mastering presets that work really good for doing what you were describing there. And as it's playing, even if you don't use that particular preset for the final master, the visuals it shows you. And when you want to see the pops, like, oh, where are the like hot hits happening? This fucking plugin grabs it and then slowly makes by the time you're done with the song, you see this heat map of where all the sound went during the song, and it gives you like all the final. It's very useful, not just for what it does processing the sound.
It's Blue Cat.
Blue Cat's Audio is the ones who make the plugins, but they have a specific one that's perfect for your final mix. When you've gotten all the instruments together, you've set the volumes generally where you like everything, but you want to give the whole mix a process, because it's not uncommon to like sizzle up the final mix. That's what mastering is. You take that like blend of the different instruments and the different levels, and you blend them together, and then you find a final sizzling recipe for that master.
Have you guys tried the Easy Mix or the Tunes people VST plugin?
I've heard of Easy
Mix mastering. Yeah,
I haven't tried either one.
I just picked it up. I haven't used it yet.
Are those the guys that make Easy Drummer?
Yeah.
Are they the same guys that make Easy Drummer? I have. Oh, and Superior Drummer. Yeah, I have played around with it to a small bit, but mixing, when I decided I even wanted to mix, which was like 2 years ago, when I got back into music, the first thing I decided was, if I'm going to get back into music, I need to learn mixing and mastering more than I need to learn I already knew the recording. I've done that, but mixing and mastering in the digital world was like a new world to me. And the last time I did it was in 2008, which digital was just starting. But in 2008, they were still half tied to analog. And all this shit was getting defined. Now we're at a time now where we're dealing with version 3 of this shit. We're in a cool place to make music now. The technology is as good as it was with the analog as far as the warmth and feel, and you have all the benefits of the digital.
My favorite part about that Blue Cat. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, man.
My favorite part of that Blue Cat one was imagine when you're ready to master and you got your level set, like you were saying, you go in and you've basically got 20 presets where imagine the presets as 20 different engineers mastering your stuff. And you're basically getting an audition of what it sounds like if Bill does it or
analyzing it from a different perspective.
Right.
Analyzing it from a different. Imagine if you went to this group of audio engineers and said, "Show me the song from a low end perspective," and then this other group, you said, "Show me from the high end perspective." Depending on the presets that you choose, you can see a heat map that focuses in on that aspect of your sound.
Amazing.
Also, got to say the idea of collaborating. Tony, you definitely have more skill in mixing and mastering than Glenn. And what Ian does is sometimes he passes off a song to John, who's who works in mixing himself and mastering. So the collaboration thing is brilliant because your skill set is beyond my skill set,
Yeah. And yeah, what Mike's talking about is on a couple of the tunes, I've sent the tracks down because now you can do this to, somebody that has a studio. And
with the cakewalk integration, you can really do it seamlessly across each other.
Oh, really? Oh, with he's got Pro Tools down there in his studio. And this last track, this opus that we're about to release, each one of these gets more and more tracks and more complicated. And Mike and I are starting to get to that point where you're pulling your hair out. And so I sent it, I did my mix. Mike and I went back and forth. Then we said, all right, let's send it down to this guy, John, and see how he will approach it. Like you're saying, a different perspective. And he's got his tricks. Every audio engineer has. The first thing he does is he trims them down and cleans them.
What DAW is he using? Is he a Pro Tools guy?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, so he wants the Pro Tool file and source because that's what he's working in.
Well, he takes my DAW, my WAV files. I get them down to him in Dropbox, and he pulls them in, organizes them, and he has to live with a lot of like the EQ and in some cases automation I'm using.
What's your DAW?
GarageBand.
Which DAW are you on? Okay, and GarageBand's not a real DAW. So in the end, in order for you to make stems of all your tracks, if you go laying down more than a couple of tracks, GarageBand does not let you export individual stems. You either have to solo and export, to get through all your. Why would you do that? So like if you're on a Mac and you want to record with tracks, if you do have Pro Tools, by all means, never use GarageBand. The only reason why GarageBand exists is to get you to use Pro Tools. So if you have Pro Tools,
you mean
just
Logic?
do it in Pro Tools.
You mean Logic?
Yeah, Logic.
Oh, sorry. Okay, no, he's got Pro Tools. That other program. The engineer's got the real Pro Tools. You know what I'm saying? That the subscriber.
The Pro Tools Pro. Yes.
Yeah,
I know. Isn't it so fucking confusing? I was going through all their options because I'm trying to help somebody like convert because they're in the exact same situation as you. Like I do this in GarageBand and I should be able to do it all. But then they don't let you export. They don't let you do anything that's actually professionally musically useful. So the best GarageBand is ever going to do is make musicians. And they do. I've met a lot of musicians who are really good because they had GarageBand.
And I use it because it's simple.
Export their shit.
You see, because
you're starting to learn Logic,
and it comes with what you have.
Well, I've used the GarageBand for quite a while because this comes down to process, and this is a great topic. I think is that for me, Mike sends me these shells, And for me, my function is I'm going to lay the groove down first, then I go up to the melodies. And if you listen to the opus, everything is a layered. It's like Weather Report of a pop band. So everything is layered, and I need to get the ideas out of my head very quickly onto a track. You know what I'm saying? I can't have anything between
When you're adding
inspiration.
when you're adding a track though, what are you adding? A line signal, like a bass?
It's a mix.
Or
Yes, I start with the bass guitar. I write almost all the melodies on the fretless because it's like me singing, right? And then once I get those,
but
parts down.
all these tracks are instrument captures. Like when you're recording your bass part, you're playing the bass.
Yeah.
The DAW is recording your bass part. The actual audio. The DAW is recording the actual audio, right? You're not like talking to the DAW to say like play this on a synth. You're just recording your audio. You don't need GarageBand for that. Any DAW, you can add line signals and vocals on any DAW. No DAW commits you to do that. DAWs you choose because they have synth engines or they have features, and those are the things that lock you in. GarageBand at this point, if you have Logic now, GarageBand is no longer worth loading. Like all that will do is make it work for you in order to use that recording that you just did. Don't lay down your bass tracks or your vocal tracks in GarageBand if you know they're just going to Logic. Go to Logic and record it over there. You'll have better options on your capture.
You're right. But you see where you're strong as an engineer, I'm weak in engineering.
You got to let go, Ian. You got to let go and move forward, man. You got to move to the new DAW.
I do, and Mike is right.
Well, you want to settle into a DAW. You're going to use. Trust me, if you start to work with a lot of musicians, you will use different DAWs. If you're mixing, I need to load different DAWs in order to load different source files. How you consolidate those stems. Stem distribution is what we're really talking about. No DAW has solved it perfectly. Stems is a standard. So I'll give you all the bass tracks. I'll give you all the percussion tracks. I'll give you 5 different categories of tracks. And that represents this recording. It's all the bouncing. Like we were talking earlier, like tape bounce. Oh my God, 16 tracks need to become 2 tracks. Stem distribution to go from your DAW to his DAW to BandLab back to somebody's DAW, you lose certain properties and BPMs. This is the challenge for Pro Tools, BandLab, all you guys making audio software. Get together and make a distribution standard so I can make stems over here and send you everything you need so that if you're using it over there, here's the info. And if you don't have this plugin, here's a suggestion, assuming your DAW can load it. That's a standard. That's like USB or MIDI. All the things that made all the other music we're talking about. This is a standard that needs to get written.
That's a great point.
Cakewalk at BandLab, if you're paying attention, make this because somebody's gonna.
Have you worked with Reason?
Yes.
I'm definitely paying attention. and I heard about a new song that's coming out.
Oh, you did?
I did. Are you guys gonna tell me about the At Rest Opus 10?
Well, Mike,
did you play this going in? I thought you were
I
gonna
did
play
not.
this going in.
No, I didn't play it going in. I wanted to make sure that we built up that audience so that more people got to hear this. This is a teaser.
Well, with That Rest, I was asleep, and I think Ian did most of that work. Is that right, Ian?
No, as usual, he provided the inspiration and the chef. And then I did a fair amount of work. But the usual process. On that one, as I remember, most of the groove was there. I added 1 drum track, so there's probably only 3 or 4 drummers on that one. And it ended up as 29 tracks. The rest is, we talked about basses and the analogs. but Tony, I also use a lot of native instrument stuff. And so I write the melodies on analog, and then I push them up through the complete with the K system, right? So there's a lot of MIDI in there too. So we stacked it all together. As our process goes, then I kick it back to Mike. He's got great ears. He hears like a missing, a kick drum is off, and these are 7-minute songs with just like a ton of parts, and he hears it right away. I adjust it. I send him back another one.
And that's the human melodyne. You don't have a melodyne. You have a micadyne.
Micadyne. Yeah, baby.
Well, you also got some new.
That's more useful.
Some vocal recording software, and you added weeping aliens. I think I call them.
Mike, you will hear the weeping aliens shortly. It's out there now. We got to live with it. But I think if you're reading the news like I do, you know that we're about to make contact with UFOs and aliens. So I thought, let's get ahead of the curve and put something out there that communicates with the aliens. Are
you trying to be funny?
I think we are. Every time you make sound, you probably are.
Tony, the
universe is definitely listening. Whether it's an alien or whether it's just where we're from, it's definitely listening.
They could be weeping angels for all we know. We're not sure.
Thank you for that clarification. It was meant to be angels.
It's a beautiful name for it. I love it.
What you're going to hear to get poor Ange back in this thing, she's lost to the geeks here again.
I love it. I'm learning a lot from you guys.
Oh, she got a button. She got a button. Right. She wants to push.
I know that, and it's time so for me to shut up and let you play it. 29 tracks of new madness, a little bit of connecting the past, but some new directions too. So I hope you like it.
I know I'm gonna like it. All right, we're gonna share it. Haha, Tony. This is only a teaser. It's private. You can't listen to it afterwards. Haha.
I don't have the speed,
Tony. Here we go.
Well, all of these opus have kicked ass. I love the whole series.
That was awesome, guys.
Very cool.
That was beautiful. It was like breezy and like just took you away to another dimension. I love that. Great job.
I love your
Thank you
there. That video.
That was a journey.
Wow.
Yes.
That was a journey.
That was a beautiful painting.
We have to learn to write longer songs, I think. We got to get up to like
I
10.
think so too. I was this can't end yet.
Opuses can be any length. That's the beauty of like picking a box like that. You can make it any size.
No, Tony, Band Lab restricts the opus. Mike, he sent me 10 and 12-minute songs.
Well, they've gotten better. 15 minutes is better than what they used to have. The 6-minute was hell. Like there were so many songs I couldn't do because the 6-minute limitation. When they pushed it, I was like, hallelujah, 15 minutes. I can fit everything I need to at least. And it's true. I couldn't fit everything. I'm sure I have a 15-minute and 1 second song.
Got a 23-minute song, Adam Hart Mother, Pink Floyd.
Oh, well, Glenn, I was going to say, why don't we collab on some Inagata Davida or something?
Ah, there you go. Nice.
Oh yeah, that bass.
Tell the world that I love you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Next collab, right? So I have a question for you, Tony. Now, because I've been going through mixing hell lately, and
We all have.
I need a
Keep it
shrink.
clean, even. Keep it clean,
Yeah.
Ian.
And even that mix right there, that Angie's, that's not the final. I still, because like I said before,
Oh,
I
that was a
listen.
beautiful mix.
Well,
That was a
thanks.
I love
beautiful
that.
mix.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
there's nothing that off the top that I would say needs to be fixed in that mix. That's a great mix, great master.
oh, thank you very much. It's that it's from that process of putting it in auto mastering, hearing what they're going to do. It's like teaching to the test, right? And then I go back,
And
check it with
you
Mike.
used you use certain like sonic special effects at the right times. There was a few moments where you had this soloing shit going on from my left to right ears as a certain instrument danced around,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of that's the kind of stuff when you put into your mixes at the right parts where you've got fluttery things that need to sound like they're fluttering around your ears, not in your ears.
Yes.
That's what that mix had. It started off like I was on planet Earth and it was a very worldly sound,
Mm.
but you turned it into a universal sound where it was like, oh damn, now I'm no longer on Earth. I'm in the spaceship going through the galaxy. And by the end, it sounded like you were coming home. Like I took a trip around the galaxy and came home in that opus.
Mm. No, thank
Wow,
you.
thanks. Wow.
He-
For Ian, it's like it's become obsession. It's become can it get it better? It's like he's in the gaucho phase of thing
It's
and
never better.
trying to write gaucho. Yeah, yeah, it's never perfect.
It's
I
never
guess, but
better. It's just a little bit further.
but it takes more
What did they
time.
say? A mix is never finished. It's only surrendered. And
I like that.
that is
I
like
like that.
a great
Wow.
saying
True.
that
Yeah.
that is the like mixing rule. You
That's
surrender it, but
beautiful.
you're
That's
never
beautiful.
completely finished with it.
Yeah.
With this one, I had to, well, we hashed this thing out. I bounced it off the engineer, like I said, but the truth was we ended up not using his tracks. It
What
just
did
went
you
in the,
pull? What did you pull? Was it certain tracks or was it certain techniques?
I sent him all 29 of the wave files, right? He put it in and he's a great professional. He can clean up tracks. He's got his tricks that, I wouldn't even dare ask him. But when it was reassembled together, we went through a couple iterations and Mike and I, we just couldn't, it just got muddy. We just lost the spirit.
And that, that's in the old days, it was the tape mush. Now it's the track mush as you go from this assembly to this reassembly. When it comes to the mixing stage, if you do have somebody who mixes and then sends it to somebody who mixes more, depending on how they mix, whether they're using the source files, the mushiness that you get there, it's a science to figure out.
I'm wondering
I
if
don't
there's even
think
a
there.
loss of
I don't
loss
think
of
there
fan.
isn't. There isn't a perfect solution to fixing the mushiness that happens when effects get burned into the track. The moment that you're mixing something and you're downloading stems of pre-processed tracks, if you add effects after, reverbs that are in a track versus reverbs that you add convoluting reverbs when they hit each other make that mush worse than anything else. I'm trying to find a way to avoid it, but when people give you wet tracks and then you want to run those wet tracks into your dry mix, those wet tracks come with that reverb and it clashes with other reverbs. You kind of have to like keep things as clean as possible. Until
bringing in the extra baggage.
When you want
you
to add the effects.
Ian, you have to know when to surrender. Much like our ex-wives. Come on. Hey.
Fozzie.
Hey.
But I think you finally hit on it. And I've been, I kept thinking, well, is it the compression? you know what I mean, that he's adding versus
Sometimes
mine.
it is compression.
Yeah.
Reverb's just one thing that mushes stems, but compression is probably the number one reason why stems mush as they move from somebody to somebody else, whether it's file compression or it's a certain compression that was added to a track just to control that track. Like, you know, if you are using compression, at least in the mixing phase, compression should be very track specific in the mixing phase. If you're doing any compression across all your tracks while you're mixing, you're not hearing the tracks that you actually should be mixing. You should be mixing them. And then if there is compression that's necessary because you got a crazy crash cymbal, that track you might do something to. But you don't want to do that on the whole mix while you're mixing.
Ian, quick question. When you send the tracks to John, do you keep the pan? Does the pan stay of the tracks? Or does everything get centered when you send the tracks?
I honestly don't know what it looks like when it hits his DAW.
Yeah, that's we got to find out. Yeah, because that's going to muddy it up too.
And that's an awesome point when it comes to panning, because you're better off doing your panning at the end. Because if you do it during the mix, if I have to send you a track, and part of why my track sounds this way is because of the panning. If we're still working out tracks, if panning is part of what needs to be maintained, then unless I'm handing you a source file and you're loading that source file and panning is stored with it,
right.
Me sending you a WAV file, now that I've panned that WAV file, later on, if you're still mixing later and you decide you want to pan, once people start putting the pan into the pan is as wet as reverb. If you put it into a track that's being sent to someone, now that track is panned that way. So when you mix it later, the beauty is when I do my final mix, I'm a visual mixer. So I'm looking for certain visual panning. And in that case, whatever you did to it, if I really want that signal over here, I'll move it over there one way or another. But panning can get lost in the stem moving.
Well, and there's even more than that, because some of the native instruments that I'm using, like those vocals there, the angels, right?
Love the sound of those. I definitely want to take a tour of that native instrument library you have.
We should. That's another.
That's definitely a like weekend night.
You can teach me how to use it. It's overwhelming at times.
And you can convince me to use it, because adding big synths and libraries, native instrument, like, is an awesome company when it comes to giving you everything with the kitchen sink. They have I want their contact keyboard solution. Like I do want it. I just need somebody to coax me into wanting it.
Well, you can get a lot of those sounds if you buy it. I have the compact keyboard, the S49. It's the medium-sized keyboard. I'm not technically a keyboardist, but I can move around and play the parts.
We all got keyboardists in us. Keyboards are just like the computer keyboards. You know how to hit them.
And now it's not like I need to have all 10 fingers moving like, I'm Jan Hammer or somebody. I'm layering these parts on, and everything I can play on the bass, I can usually transfer over to my fingers on the MIDI controller. So you start to hear all those horn parts and all those things that are like coming up. And I use a lot with automation, so that they, if you listen back to that track, the horns start like at the 8-bar phrase at the bottom, and they climb up through, and there's 3-part horns, and they are in and around the lead melody.
Those were part of what was dancing. Those were part of what was dancing during that moment.
And so to connect it to what you're saying, I do my premix, in this case, before I sent it to John, that guy, right? So I'm sure he held his head when he got that stuff, as like with a migraine coming. It's like I put the automation in, the native instrument, the angels are already panning by themselves all over the place, right? So I just keep them in the center, and the software is already panning like crazy left and right. You know what I'm saying?
And
Like
you
a
know,
video game.
this,
Yeah.
this is an interesting scenario because what we're talking about really here is like a post, a mix is not one stage, and hopefully if it's a really serious song, it is not one ear because a mix goes through multiple ears, and before it gets to that mastering stage, when you're handing it to this dude and like you're giving him the wet tracks, like this is panning effect in this track. You're looking for that second and third level adjustment at that point. And I think when sound engineers know, it's like all the chefs in the kitchen. When every chef knows what they're there for, you can make great mixes when you are passing them around to the right people. I would love to have some mixing parties where
I should send you one of these.
where where we actually like take a real finished mix through the process of a couple of years.
Oh, that'd be
Sure, would make a
amazing.
great game show, actually. You know, like audio game.
Yeah, actually, that.
You know?
Yeah,
chefs
user
competing.
voting on which mix. It would be like it would be like one of those competing chef shows.
You have half an hour to
Mixing
mix
by
30
committee.
tracks. Mix 30 tracks in a half an hour. Go.
Yeah, right. I know it. Well,
It is doable though.
You see, well, one of the reasons that I have to get into the depth with, I'm pre-mixing as I'm layering and recording, right? So the angels are all over the entire spectrum. So I look at the thing as like a stage, right? A left and a right. And then the bass is gonna, and the kick drum are in the center. Everybody knows that. And then I try to pan the other guys out. But as a musician, and I'm writing these parts, like those horn parts, my biggest fear is that there's mid-range cancellation, and then possible even what we call, interval violation, which right?
Yes, because I keep trying to explain to people like not to pan too equally. Like you will put your shit in frequencies where they actually cancel each other out.
Right.
That whole
Destructive
center,
interference,
that whole center problem, that's something that like old school mixing, they used to center all the vocals. So that's why you can build like karaoke tracks by just neutralizing the center sound, and boom, some of those old tracks, the vocals disappear because all of them mixed that way for so long. Now it's gotten more complicated. Now you can't just suck vocals out through equalization. But in the old days, you really could, because the old school record engineers all followed the like center vocals, everything else off to the sides.
One of the other mixing videos I watched recently was talking about mixing in mono as a step in the process. Like if you get everything dead center and you mix everything mono so that you're getting an idea of what's jumping out too much or not enough. And then when you pan after that, everything is already sitting very nicely. And
that's interesting because I've always felt that panning, or thought or heard that panning kind of like gives it its own place and makes it a little bit louder.
Right.
Panning is about placement. But doing it in mono the way that this guy suggests
makes sense.
Actually, it's just like soloing. Like, when you're listening to a mix of something and you need to solo for a second because you got to focus in on what you're really trying to adjust. So there are moments where I just want to hear that one instrument by itself. And then I want to unsolo and hear how that instrument really is.
That's a great idea, though. And to put it all in mind.
And then solo it back and feel where I want it in that space. And then let it go. Is it in that space? You feel out your track and where if you just decide like, oh, I'm going to put it here. It sounds good. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. But when you have that like sound that you really want to lead or pad, where you place them becomes the song. Like, oh, when I'm in the chorus, I'm here. When I'm in the verse, I'm here and I flutter. It's as much of a visual experience as it is a sonic one when you mix it that way.
Yeah.
Which add-on was it, Tony, that you had that moved the sound around the sound space? You could like drag and draw the path that you want the sound to take around behind the speaker.
Oh,
And then
the Sonnetus surround. Yeah, that's a built-in freebie with Cakewalk. That's surround, but you know, all the surround plugins out there, if you're playing with any of them, they do let you draw where you want your sound to be. If you're really hardcore and you say, I want that guitar to flute from the front to the back and off this side, and then zoom to the other side and then come back. With the Sonnetus surround, you can draw the shape, set the time that, like, I start here at 2 minutes and 2 minutes and 10 seconds, I go to here. It does the heavy lifting.
That's so cool. Yeah.
And it's as simple as drawing in that situation. I use that plugin like literally on every project that I have, because there's always something you want to swoop.
Well, I'm going to try that mono lineup on my next little rock and roll mix I'm working on a song, and so I can hear everything kind of equal, and then do the pan. Thanks guys. That's some great advice.
Whenever you're actually in a when you're in mixing mode, you're in listening mode. So whenever you're like trying to listen to a track and how that track sounds with everything else, the switch between stereo and mono in your direction is as useful as switching solo on and off. The same reason you want to isolate to see what the sound sounds like. Switching between stereo and mono really helps you to hear the single version of the sound versus the stereo replication.
Plus, we can release vinyl. The A side is all mono, and the B side is stereo. We double the money. That panning that can get lost when you're sending from this DAW to that DAW, and if you panned and now you sent him wet panning tracks. When you're doing it in mono on, say, a bass track, on instrument tracks, that panning that might mush things up might not mush things up so much if they are in mono. In those cases, it's almost beneficial to keep, if the source is a bass or a vocal, and assuming that it's a real mono vocal mic, keep those tracks mono all the way till the final, and when you're mixing, then utilize stereo through effects, because that's what you do to those tracks. If you do that, a lot of the mush you're talking about won't exist ever, because it was never there to mush it up later. The mush is coming from shit that is building up over a wet track moving. That is the complication with moving these tracks around.
Huh.
Wow.
I'm telling you, Man Lab, fix this. They do that. They don't have to worry about selling their software. They solve that problem. Every musician out there that's going to want to bounce shit around and not have the mixing mush that can happen.
Wow.
Very cool.
That's value added service.
I'm getting the feeling that we're approaching pumpkin time here.
I believe so. Yeah. My Karen waits.
We're getting past pumpkin time.
Edge lost her slipper.
All you got to do is edit out all the stuff that Ian said, and I think it'll be a great interview.
Please do.
Perfect.
You were recording this, were
We're
you?
gonna have to do this again.
Well, I have more topics. Tony's getting me going here, so
Yeah,
we
you guys
got
are brilliant. It's great. It's great
Oh, yeah.
talking with you guys. You could go on
Yeah.
forever.
I want to check out that native instrument shit.
Well,
We'll
we
get
do
to
this
that next
every
time.
Thursday, so you guys are always welcome.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Wow.
Yes,
And
thank
Glenn
you.
said he is in for a collaboration.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
What we should, how about this as an idea? We'll do a collab that could become one of Tony's master or classes on mixing.
Absolutely.
Actually, I'd love to make a whole series of masterclass mixing on different scenarios, and that
different
can
styles
be,
too.
yeah, like all the situations you deal with when you're mixing. Especially with Band Lab, because trust me, you see some crazy shit on Band Lab when it comes to how do I fix this? How do I mix this?
Oh yeah.
Well, I surrender to the time.
And we definitely appreciate you guys coming out.
Well, thank you for having us. And Ange, thank you so much for playing the song. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. You think I'm going to let you go that easy? I'm going to have to play it again.
Ay, ay, ay.
I'm going to end the show with your song. Is that okay?
Well, yes, because now I get to soak it in. The first time she like teased me, I thought I was going to get this at the beginning of the show. She didn't give it to me like till almost to the end.
See how that works?
It's my
Well, you guys
connection.
are the best. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You guys. Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you.
Anytime.
All right. Well, this ends our edition of Talking IT with Glenn and Tony. Till next week, here we go.
It's like a gas tank. About to explode.
Or the fuse on the dynamite, yeah.
Escape, double click. Where'd the sound go?
It's loading.
Willkommen in der Arbeiterkolonie. Spitzhacke zur linken Seite, Schaufel zur rechten Seite. Und immer daran denken. Arbeit macht das Leben was ich brauche, harte Arbeit, was ich habe, hartes Leben, ist das Freiheit oder Gier? Willst du frei sein oder Gier? Ist das Freiheit oder Gier?
gonna spread love or hate? Are you gonna spread love